Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about days 2 and 3 of the tournament on Lake Murray. Unfortunately, I did not make day 4. I'm pretty disappointed about that. I'm really happy with the finish that I had, but when I look back on the event, to miss the top 10 cut by 8 ounces is pretty tough. I mean, I had the fish on to make those 8 ounces up, and I had the fish found to gain an additional 8 ounces. I thought I needed a little bit more than that to make the final day, where in hindsight, had I only needed 8 ounces, I think I could have picked that up relatively easily and made it into the final day. But so I'm back here in Wisconsin. I've had a lot of time to reflect on it. I wanted to let you guys know what my strategy was, how I went about finding the fish, and come tournament time, how I went about executing my tournament. So, with this year, with the changes that we have in terms of practice, we're only allowed 2 days of practice now. And that really makes it difficult to break down some of these lakes that are really large in size and have lots of different options to choose from. So when I got there, my initial strategy was going to be to chase blueback herring the first hour or 2 of the morning, try to catch a couple of good fish, and then spend the rest of the day fishing shallow for what I thought would be a waning spawn bite. I really thought it was going to be something that was not really strong, but I thought there'd be enough left to find some additional fish. Now, once we got there for practice, what I found quickly was that the blueback herring spawn bite was not going to be taking place everywhere. I think we were a little bit early for that. I think it was just starting to ramp up, and I ran probably 25 points in the morning, that first morning of practice, and never really did much. I caught 2, maybe 2-pound bass, but it was not anything that excited me. I caught a bunch of stripers, but did not find any good sized largemouth. So after that couple hours of chasing that bite in the morning, I then went to the bank, and within about 15 minutes, I came across a nice bedfish. And I thought, okay, well, obviously there are still fish that are spawning. And I continued to go down the bank and quickly realized that there were a lot of fish that were still up shallow, and that would be a major player in this tournament. So I spent the rest of the day kind of just, fishing shallow, looking for spawners, but not necessarily making that my game plan until probably around noon, when I really realized that, hey, I found a lot of 3-pound class fish that were on beds, and that, if I really bared down on that for the next day and a half, that I could find enough fish to make it a good strategy. And not only was I finding bedfish, I had found several large fry ball garters, that were 3 to 4 pound class fish that you can basically chalk up as a bedfish, and that, you mark it, and they're probably going to be roughly in that same area you found them in practice during the tournament. So I did that for the remainder of the day. And at the end of the day, I want to say I had roughly 50 waypoints of primarily fish that were roughly 3 pounds, in that 3-pound range or greater. And I felt really good about it. And at that point, because we only have 2 days of practice, I decided to really concentrate solely on that and not try to do anything different. And I spent the next day, I did the same thing all over in the morning again, looking for the blueback herring bite. And again, pretty much struck out. I hit a whole ton of points, spent a couple hours, and it just was not happening for me. So I quickly switched over and went to looking for shallow fish again, and did not have nearly as good a day. I probably found 25 waypoints, 25 fish that I marked waypoints on, and, still felt relatively comfortable. I found a few fish during that day that I thought were relatively easy to catch. I had one, I wouldn't fish for all of the ones that I found. A lot of them I would mark. And I want to stress, guys, so when I mark them, one of the fantastic features about the Lowrance units is that when you put a waypoint in, you can pull up the notes section and then enter in anything you want within the notes section. It's just like, pulling up a computer and typing in anything that you want. So when I find a bed, I always try to make pretty detailed notes. So if it's, on the left side of a dock on the third post out, I will type that into my computer, into the Lowrance unit, and I'll say, 3-pound class fish on the third post on the left side of the dock, relatively active fish or easy fish to catch, or not an active fish, or a very sketchy fish, in terms of it just showing the body behavior that indicates to me that it may not be a super easy fish to catch. But I do that specifically so that when I go to those fish in the tournament, I pull up the waypoint, I read what I wrote, and I can find almost that exact spot as to where the fish is, so that I can blind fish for that bedding fish before I actually see it, which is an extremely successful way to catch bedfish. And, in this day, on day 3, we had really crummy conditions, where it rained and it was windy, just not ideal for bed fishing. And I was able to catch several fish because of my notes that I had entered in my Lowrance unit during practice. So it's worth taking the extra time to enter in those details so that you know exactly where those fish are when you go back, because you'd think you'd remember where the fish was when you saw it in practice, but 3, 4, 5 days after you found it and you've seen hundreds of bedfish, they all kind of blend in. So it's nice to have those notes. So I enter those notes in during practice, and I had several fish that I had found that I thought were relatively easy fish to catch compared to the others. I've never been to a lake where I've seen so many bedfish that acted in the same manner that were really, really questionable fish to catch. Almost all of these fish would make giant circles around the bed. And I'm not sure yet if that means if it's because they hadn't actually spawned yet, so they had nothing to guard. But these fish would make like 30-foot wide circles around the bed, which is not unusual behavior to see in a bedfish. But 90% of these fish had the same behavioral characteristics, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It means that they're not easily catchable fish. But because they all have similar characteristics, once I was kind of able to figure out what triggered them, it worked from one fish to the next. And I think that's one reason I was pretty successful catching a lot of the spawning fish. But I will say, at the end of that second day, I went back and checked what were some of those easier fish that I actually did fish for in practice without a hook, just to see if I could get them to bite. And they weren't there. They were gone. So I don't know if somebody caught them and they left, or they finished spawning, they vacated, or some of the cold weather that we had rolling during the tournament screwed that up. I'm really not sure as to why some of those fish left. But, I went into the tournament with probably 75 waypoints of 3-pound class fish, and went out the first day of the tournament, committed solely to it, ran to, so in day 1, if you watch the day 1 recap, you saw these fish. Although the first fish of the day I did not get because my camera turned off. I turned the camera off accidentally because I'm using a YOLO stick that goes in the back light compartment. And when I got to my spot, I turned my lights off because I was thinking running lights, but that actually turned the camera off. So I missed it. It was a first cast, got that fish, blind fish in it, and it was a 3.5-pound class fish. And then, I just started running waypoints, and I had, the weight I had, almost 18 pounds, 1710, 1712, whatever I had that by about noon, and I was last flight on day 1. So I ended up getting about 5 hours to go look for additional beds. And during that 5-hour time span, I probably found another 10 to 12 3-pound class fish that were on beds. They're, in the same general area that I was fishing, which made me feel real confident. And I had one of those fish that I found was like a 4+ pound fish for sure that I could have caught. I felt very comfortable confident that I could have caught it at the end of day 1, but I didn't want to do it because my smallest fish was over 3.25 pounds, and I was like, you know what, I'd rather have a 4-pounder to start on for day 2 than catch it for day 1 and only upgrade by maybe a half pound, 3/4 pound. And in hindsight, I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I would have caught it because, again, I missed the day 4 cut by 8 ounces. And that fish would have helped me by more than 8 ounces. And I never caught it. I went to it on day 2. I worked on it for an hour, got it to the point it was kind of getting to the point where it was catchable. But because I had the really short day, I was first flight on day 2, I wanted to go catch fish. I did not want to sit on that fish for more than I already had. And I knew I had other fish that I wanted to go catch. So I ran around and ended up catching, I had my 16, 15, basically 17 pounds again it took me till about 1:30 to catch it, and I had to be in at 3 o'clock. And at that point, I went and checked that 4-pound fish, and it was not there. It was gone. So I ran to another fish. My smallest fish was about 2 3/4 pounds. I had another fish that I thought was roughly 3.5 pounds, and I worked on that fish for an hour. I finally got it to bite, and I lost it at the boat, and it was for sure every bit of 3.5. It was probably closer to 4 pounds. And that fish pulled off, and I had about 20 minutes to go at that point, so I didn't do anything more that day. So I ended the day in 8th place and made the day 3 cut, the top 50 cut, which was great, thinking I still had, a couple of good fish to go to. Well, day 3 rolls in, and we've got a lot of bad weather, just windy, overcast, rainy, stormy, bad day. Not a sight fishing day. And, I went to those couple fish, that 4-pounder and the one I lost the day before. They were not to be had. So I ended up kind of fishing around, and I actually, before I got to the bedfish, I did start on a schooling spot and caught 3 1.5 to 2 pound class fish, which I hadn't done the first 2 days, but I wanted to do it because I wanted it to settle me down so that I could go sit on beds and blind fish them for a lot longer, not knowing if those fish were there. Because with the conditions we had, there was no way I was going to be able to see those fish. So I just wanted to put some fish in the live well to kind of put me at ease for sitting on some fish for a longer period of time. And I did that. I sat on some fish for a long time, and I honestly don't even know if they were there or not because I could not see them with the conditions that we had. But I was able to catch 2 fish that were about 3 3/4 pounds that I had marked, another 2 1/4 pounder, and then I had 2 2-pounders by the end of the day. So I had a little under 14 pounds, which dropped me from 8th place to 15th place, which was disappointing. But I got to tell you, I was pretty satisfied as well for just, still coming in with a decent bag on that day, doing what I wanted to do, which was sight fishing, because I really had nothing else that was working in that tournament. I don't think that was necessarily the winning pattern, but I do believe had we had a good weather condition day 3, stable weather like days 1 and 2 and 4, that I probably could have done 17 pounds all 4 days. Like, I felt confident. I had more fish found, but they were fish I couldn't even really blind fish successfully because they were way offshore or just, in the middle of the back of a cove that, it was just too hard to fan cast. And they were such sketchy fish to catch anyways that, you could have sat there and let a bait sit there for an hour and they wouldn't eat it. You almost had to force them to eat it. So that was my day. I'm disappointed because I know I had the fish on to pick up 8 ounces. And at the end of day 3, I had other 2.5 pound class fish found that I think I could have gone to and caught relatively easily to cull out my smallest fish on day 3, which was a 1 pound, 15 ounce fish. And that would have picked me up about 8 ounces. But, it is what it is. It was a good tournament, got good points. So I just want to point out a couple of the setups I was using. I caught the majority of the fish on, really on one bait, the Berkley Max Scent General, just the 5-inch size. And I was fishing that wacky rigged weightless. And I would do that. I'd pull up to a bed that I had marked. I'd throw either the green pumpkin or the green pumpkin watermelon laminate in the 5-inch size, and I'd throw that to where the bed was and blind fish it for a few casts. And I caught, every day I caught 1 or 2 fish doing that. And then if that didn't work, then I would pull up to the bed to see if I could see the fish. And when I could do that, that's when I'd put down the weightless wacky rig, but I pick up a drop shot. This is a 4-inch General in the same colors, Max Scent Berkley General. And I was fishing the drop shot on those beds, and that seemed like that was a good way to generate strikes. Again, a couple of things I want to point out with both of those two, with the rod and reel setups. You can see on both these I'm throwing the Revo Rocket, Abu Garcia Revo Rocket, which is a super high speed spinning reel. And the reason I was doing that is because I was, when you're throwing to a specific target like a bed, the spot, you know, that bed is the target zone. So if I'm sitting 50, 60 feet away, throw my bait out, let it hit the bottom, I'm not working my bait any more than that. So the high speed reel allows me to pick up, to reel my bait in at such a high speed that I will gain casts throughout the day because of that time I gain just retrieving that bait back to making, you know, another cast. So I was doing that same thing with bed, you know, with the, if I'm not blind fishing to it, but if I'm throwing, say, this drop shot in there, you know, you put it in there, if the cast is no good, you reel it up, and you will gain casts throughout the day in the time that you save by reeling your bait in faster. On both of these, you know, these were custom rods again. On the wacky rig drop shot, this is a NSJ 871 blank. It's a MHX blank through mud hole. This was an MB 862 extra fast that I was throwing the wacky rig on for making longer casts. Both of these are not super high power, you know, high power rods in terms of strength, but they're rods that, you know, with these larger fish, I still have enough backbone to allow me to get them to the boat. And again, I stress you want to reel with super good drag system, a smooth drag system, because again, when you're dealing with bigger fish, and a lot of times when you're bed fishing, you're closer, they'll make good solid runs and your drag needs to work really well. I was also then throwing, one thing that was interesting with these fish, this is a Dirty Jigs Luke Clausen compact pitching jig. I pull a weed guard out if I'm bed fishing with it. You can see there's no weed guard on there. And that's matched with a Berkley 3-inch Pit Boss. This is a, I'm trying to think of the color of the jig. It's just their Magic, I think it's Magic Craw, and then it's just a Green Pumpkin 3-inch Pit Boss. The jig was a really good bait to get them agitated. I don't know what it is, but a lot of the baits they really didn't care much about. But when I threw the jig in there, that would kind of get them into an agitated mode. I don't know if it's because it's a bigger, bulkier bait, but it just would get them into more, you know, that agitated state where I'd have a better shot at getting them to bite. In practice, I got a lot of bites on the jig. In the tournament, I did not actually catch the fish on the jig, but it was a big player in terms of getting me to get those fish to the point where I could catch them on something else. You know, a lot of times that's the key with bed fishing. It's all about changing their mood and getting them active. You know, in this case, I was throwing this on, so this is a Revo ALF, Abu Garcia reel. Just one of my favorite all-purpose reels that I use. Again, it's this is the higher speed ratio. I think it's 8-to-1. Yep, it's an 8-to-1 speed, so I could pick up line real fast for making repetitive casts to that fish. On the MHX FP885 rod, which is one of my absolute favorite go-to flipping rods that they make. And those were the 3 main rods throughout the tournament. The last bait I'll point out, you know, this is what I caught those schooling fish on the last day, and one of the big players in the tournament. So this is the CBOT Magic Swimmer, which is being renamed to the Berkley Magic Swimmer because Berkley acquired CBOT quite some time ago. The chrome color is the deal out there for the blueback herring. Like I said, I caught 3. The only time I used it in the tournament, I caught 3 fish on it. So it was a good way to start my day 3. And this I was throwing on the Abu Garcia Revo Premier spinning reel, great all-purpose reel again, on one of my favorite MHX blanks. This is the HMB 874, and it's just another great all-purpose rod. So that was my setup, guys. That was pretty much the baits that did all my damage. I, want to show you guys some video. I had some awesome fish catches. Unfortunately, I don't have video for days 2 and 3. On day 2, the camera shut off on the route to my first spot, and I guess I never checked it. I thought I usually check to see if I can see the light flashing, and I would have sworn that it was, but I don't have video for it. Day 3, I was having trouble keeping it on during the rain. It kept turning off, I kept turning it on. I have a couple of fish catches from that, but I figured I would just not include any because it doesn't make much sense if they're not all in order, in my opinion. So, but again, it's bed fishing, so you know, if you watch the day 1 video, you'll see basically what I was doing. And yeah, so that's my setup, guys. Thanks for watching. We go to Lake Eufaula in a couple weeks. Hopefully we can keep up the momentum, have another good top 20 finish, and really secure our place up inside the, you know, the top 25 in points. Right now I think I'm 25th. So thanks for watching, guys.